So you've never been here.
Uh, I think I've never gone into it in detail. No,
Okay.
I
So
have brief.
on the home page, that's all the different um, data feeds on the left. And then on the right is going to be all the different providers.
Now, aren't data feeds and providers the same?
Now, the data feeds are what are the FTSOs. That's the oracles that, so like if you look down the list, Aave, Ada, those are the prices that are coming in
Uh-huh.
from the data providers that are on the right.
Okay, got you.
So if you go up top, click on providers. So these are all the metrics that are going to basically tell you what each provider is doing. On the right is weight. That is the total weight that each provider has, which is a combination of the FTSO delegation and their stake. So, for example, we have Ford Ads has 297 million total weight. That breaks down to roughly, I think we have 150-ish million on the data provider side, and then I think we have right around 140 on the on that stake to us. No, we have 100 stake. Oh, because this is delayed, so that is going to be at the snapshot for last epoch. Um, and the delegation reward rate is also a trailing indicator. So that will be for last epoch. That was our reward rate for last epoch. So now if you go scroll up a little bit and click not on the top bar, but below providers, go to advanced. So now you'll see more metrics. It'll give what we earned in fees is that first column. And that's what we took in last epoch. The next column will be what our delegators took in and split. And then scroll to the right. So the delegation reward rate shows up again. That would be last epoch's reward rate. That's how much you would have earned if you delegated 100 flare. And now you'll
670.
and yep, and then now you'll see our delegation weight. So we were locked in for the current epoch at 206 million. And then I think what was our we were also locked in for 100 something million. What would that be? 140 million on our validator. The reason those numbers are important, I had that tweet the other day that talked about signing 50%. In order for rewards to be released on the data provider side, 50% of the total weight has to agree on what the rewards are. So if I mean we're somewhat influential. I think we have 340 million. If you look on that front page, go to basic again. So, or no, we were 297. So if you scroll down, you'll see some that are in the billions. Um, yeah, filter by weight. So there
Bifrost.
you got some. Yeah, so some are in the billions. So if they don't sign,
Aren't
then it takes a long time for rewards to get released, which is a lot of people have been complaining about. And part of the reason is there's a lot of big providers that don't sign regularly or ever. And it just so it takes, I mean, if you scroll to the bottom, you'll see some of the ones that are active that sign regularly. Those are no longer active. Go to right around there. I mean, there's some
How do you know they signed? Where does it say they signed at?
it doesn't. So on the next page, I think they did add a column on how often providers sign in the advanced tab. So, but I just wanted to show you that right side of the total weight because I don't think they show total weight on the next on advanced. So the total weight will give you how influential they are when it comes to signing.
My
Uh,
my question is isn't there a cap on the total weight each company can get?
Not for total signing. There is a cap individually on how much influence you could have on the data provider system. That's at, I believe, still 2.5%. So even if you go over that, your influence on the data being submitted can't be over 2.5%. So there's a hard cap on that. So say Bifrost, for example, say they have a 1.3 billion. I don't know what the hard cap is in terms of weight right now, but if they have 1.3 billion in FTSO delegation, they might only have 700 or 800 million that actually goes towards their weight of their data. And then they're splitting 800 million or whatever that number is. They're splitting that amount worth of rewards amongst the 1.3 that are delegated to them on the FTSO. So that's why
Really?
when you hear, yeah, when you hear them talk about like our rewards are diluted, if you look at their reward rate, nobody with over a billion is going to have a significantly high reward rate because it's being diluted because they're over that cap. So
Wow.
it's basically like splitting, if you have,
So all these people who are dumping money into this are really hurting themselves by
yeah,
not
yeah. And they're
difference.
hurting the system. When someone's over delegated, it hurts the system because you're consolidating vote power rather than delegating it across the board uh, to basically decentralize the data further.
So there's the better ones to delegate to, at least for reward rate ratios.
There is a way to game that right now that we're starting to see. But eventually, hopefully, that'll be cleaned up a little bit. Right now, the ratio of your stake weight to your delegator weight, if you have a lot of stake and not as much delegation and you're not over cap, you'll hit a lot more on the fast update feeds. So when that gets rewarded, if you have, that's why you'll see some people shoot up into the top of this. Every once in a while, we're in like the top five because we have a lot of stake, but historically, we've had very little vote power on the FTSO side. So there was like 2 weeks in a row where we were in the top three because we only had 30 million in delegation and we had like 140 million in stake. So our reward rate was like zero point 0.1 at some points because of that imbalance. And then all of a sudden, people flood in because they think that's the reward rate they're gonna get, but it's not. It's a trailing indicator. It's
Last
the
epoch.
reward rate from last epoch. So people flooded in, not realizing, oh, now that the snapshot hits and we have actually at one point we had 600 million vote power. And our reward rate went from like 0.99 all the way down to 0.34. So we went from literally the best in reward rate for the previous epoch. People flooded in, gave us a ton of vote power, and received the lowest reward rate possible. And I even made a post that our devs got pissed about on Twitter. I'm like, for all you idiots that are now delegating to us because we're at the top of the list. And our one of our devs sent a screenshot of it to me and was like, why are you calling our delegators idiots? I'm like, because they think we're getting the highest reward rate. We're not going to. They're going to get smoked. And then they're going to be like, why aren't we getting zero point 0.9 or 0.099? And I'm like, yeah, at least we'll warn them about it. So,
All right.
yeah. I
I
mean,
mean, I'm sorry. Yeah, the truth hurts.
yeah, and sure enough, it played out exactly that way. And people were like, we're now back down to like 120 million. So we lost 500 million in vote power over the span of 2 weeks because of that. So there is no great way to give real time rewards, and I mean, it's not a flaw in the system. It's kind of by design. Um, and the reason they can't give real time rewards is because all those calculations were taken off chain and moved to the end of the epoch, which is why we now sign for rewards. So you can go back to the advanced and we'll scroll and then scroll right. Let's see. So uptime signed and reward signed. Those are your columns that tell you how often they're signing. Uptime signed is automatic. Um, and you're never gonna see, you might see just by chance someone who's 10 out of 10, 8 out of 10, 9 out of 10 on the uptime column, but that's automated, and it's pretty much it's first come first serve. So when the epoch ends, it runs automatically, and you either sign or you don't. You're either part of that 50% and you hit it at the right time, or you don't. The reward signed, who is 11 out of 10? Yo, delegate to them. All right, I think there's a bug.
I seem to find them all the time.
Yeah. So reward signed is a manual process. And the reason it's manual, it could be automated, but then you'd be blind signing. The reason it's manual is because our developer has to open up and see what's reported for the rewards and basically say, yes, this is right, and sign it, or disagree with it. So it's not been wrong yet, I don't believe.
I was going to ask.
Yeah, it's not been wrong yet. And so you open it up, you do your double check, and then you sign the transaction. And obviously there's a bunch of 10 out of 10s, and it's based on that middle 50%. I think we're probably in the 8 or 9 area, hopefully. Oh no.
Where you at for, Dad?
All right, there we are.
Barely made the cut.
Eventually, if this works as planned, everyone should be around 5 out of 10, because you're talking about the top 50%. The guys with more total weight should be higher because they're more influential. They can put it over the edge. They like if it's at 46%.
I mean, Bifrost only need to sign, right? And that's 50%, right? Close to it.
Not quite, but yeah, if I haven't done the math on it, but if like the top 5 or 10 sign, they can push it through by themselves. Whereas, when you start getting into the guys that have 6 million total weight, 5 million total weight, there's not many of them, but there are a few. I don't know what the percentage is, but they move the needle very little. The Google Cloud, get your shit together.
Right?
Yeah. They're running a validator and a data provider, and they haven't had anyone do that. Haven't put anyone on the task of signing. There's a lot of notable providers that are on there that have never signed. Specifically, a lot of the pros.
Once a month, right? So we're talking like the last 10 months.
No, this is every 3.5 days.
Oh, this is every 3.5 days?
Yeah. So it's a month, basically. It's 35 days.
Wow, you have to do that every 3.5 days.
Yep.
Oh, all right. I did not know that. Why is it so often?
It's every epoch. You have to attest to the results of the epoch in order for rewards to go out.
So I have 2 questions for you. One, I remember maybe a year ago there were some FTSO providers that they were colluding and they were throwing like really high reward rates, but they wasn't real.
Yeah.
Not being like exterminated.
Yeah. So the management group was put into action probably around that time. That reward rate was real. If you delegated to them, you would earn that much. But basically the way it was working, there was so much influence on vote power. So they were all running the same algorithm. So it was basically a way to circumvent the cap that was put on vote power. So if they ran 5 data providers, which they did, and 2 of them had a couple 100 million at that time, there was no tying validator weight to the system was completely different. That was V1 of the FTSO. So it was almost like if you had max vote power, you could essentially move that middle channel on your own if you had max vote power. Like you were very influential. So if 5 came along that all had 1 to 2.5% of the vote power, they'd have like 10% influence on the final price. And with how tight the ranges are, they would move the price into their range pretty effortlessly. So it was, the rewards they were earning were real, but they were cheating the system. And when you sign on as a data provider, you're basically saying like, You're basically signing a pact to say, I'm not, I'm running one, and there is some level of honesty that's required. So that's why when the management group came to fruition, it was basically like, hey, if you guys can catch these guys, go catch them and we'll vote them out. And they came up with a mechanism to chill them as their first warning for 2 weeks. And then if they were caught colluding again, they would get banned. And there was a bunch that got banned. And the way we would catch them for the most part is we would just click through the at the time there was a, gosh, what was it even called?
Y'all make Hugo's job even harder, and it has to be, don't y'all?
Well, yeah, I mean, we were bitching about this for a long time, and then finally they came up with a good system that could work, basically as like a governance system within the data provider group that could find evidence, and if the evidence was agreed upon, everyone could vote and vote to have them removed. And we would basically click through charts of every submission, and you would find someone all of a sudden would either have like simultaneous downside or downtime. So if two providers went offline the exact same epoch, and by epoch I mean like the price epoch, which is 90 seconds, if they went down at the same time and then came back up at the same time, that's usually a pretty good indicator that we should look into them a little better. What are the odds that two people's nodes had identical downtime to the minute? So if we saw that, we would then like filter just those two and realize, oh, they submitted the exact same price for 2 days straight on this asset to the fifth decimal. So the odds of that are pretty slim unless you're running the same algorithm and submitting the same time. I mean, if you think about all the stuff that goes into these price submissions over, at the time, I think it was 2 minutes or it might have been 3 minutes, you're gathering data over the span of 3 minutes from all the exchanges available that you use and from all the same timestamps, or like just the odds of that, whether you're using the order book or if you're using like just price feeds from that exchange, the odds of submitting the exact same price to the fifth decimal is impossible. So, maybe it happens once or twice. For it to happen for 12 hours is
Not a
pretty
chance.
likely. And then you combine that with their common downtime that they shared, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh, these two providers who aren't, we have no idea who they are. They have a screen name or something that we could then message and say, hey, we're gonna create a proposal to chill you, and then they'd have to come in and defend themselves. And it was always the same story. It was always like, oh, so and so stole my algorithm, and it was always this wild tale. My roommate from college stole my algorithm, and now they're running it, and it was always bullshit. And so then there'd be a discussion, they could defend themselves, and then there'd be a vote on whether or not to chill them. So that's that system. We haven't had to bring, and that's run on app called Discourse. And if I don't know where the links are, I could probably dig up some links for you to go look at the old discussions for chill proposals. It's also where we're discussing adding new feeds too. Like when we added the Trump token as a community added token because it reached certain requirements for volume. That discussion of adding that happened on there. Anytime there's new assets being added to the data feed.
Yeah, we definitely want that group name. Send that to us.
Yeah, so it's Discourse. It's and it's not the greatest, but it's a good place to fragment all these different conversations about kind of what's going on. So that's where all the chill proposals were discussed. And now that's where certain things will be discussed in a public way that's publicly viewable.
Yeah, I remember, at some point I was kind of hunting for rewards, and then those rewards were so good that it was kind of hard to ignore. And then I remember the proposal, the group coming up and then following on some of them. And like you said, sometimes their their defending was ridiculous. He was like, what are you even trying?
Yeah.
So but we are clear from that. Like right now, anybody that joins Flare can choose any of the providers, and they know that they're not cheating, or it's not like foolproof.
Yeah, as far as I know. I mean, you can obviously you can't be 100% certain, but I'd say all the providers right now are good independent actors.
The way it works is generally always a rule is made because somebody broke it. So they found a way to break the system. Somebody's going to find a way to break the system. Somebody's going to have to make a rule. Somebody's going to have to do that. Eventually, if there's a will, there's a way.
Yeah, well, that's
so there to make money faster than make it hard.
There is a bit of a flaw right now with setting your validator fee. So that was kind of brought to the attention just in the last few days. We've seen a few validator fees get set real low. The reason for that is because of that thing I was talking about with fast updates. If you draw in a ton of stake on your validator, it gives you more total weight, which then makes you more influential in getting selected for rewards on the fast update feeds. So if you see someone with a 1% validator fee, there's a good chance they're doing that because they're trying to draw in more stake, which is it's not a bad thing. It's just it's not sustainable. There's a lot of big guys that could set their validator fee at 1% and weed out everybody else. Yeah.
Yep. Everybody out of the game.
Yeah. So that I mean, if Google Cloud wanted to clear the network out and they're like, we want all the validator rewards and all the data provider rewards, they could come in. I'm pretty sure Google could probably afford to set a low fee and run at a loss for
however long they want. As long as they want. Actually,
they'll run at a loss way longer than 4dads can. So if they came in and ran at a loss and just ran us off the network, we'd walk away. We'd probably delegate to them, and make our delegation rewards off them, and they could just weed everybody out. So there is a little bit of like accountability to other data providers, and at some point, because this discussion has been going on, at some point I think we're going to see like kind of a minimum be set on what you could have your validator reward at. A lot of the colluders,
like a time limit. Like if you're going to drop it to 1%, you can only do it for 30 days.
Yeah, there's been a few options that have been discussed. I think a set fee at a set, like in my opinion, we've held at 20%. We could draw in way more if we wanted to drop to 10%, and we could probably afford to. But in defense of the little guy and not pulling from them, we haven't done that because like if we did that, we would draw in more stake and we'd probably fill up completely. We're getting good support at 20%. So why would I want to pull from Mickey B Fresh or one of the, I don't know who's down, like they don't have a ton. There's a bunch that are really good, honest data providers and infrastructure providers that I wouldn't want to pull from just to chase a little bit of higher rewards on the data provider side. So some of that, I'm like, in a perfect world, we wouldn't have to do any of that because everyone would just be like, oh, like we could set our fee at 15% and maybe we don't get as much stake coming in, but which in turn would lead to less FTSO rewards, but we're doing fine. We can do fine without those extra stakers. So at some point, I think we're going to see probably a governance vote on that. And we would support it. We'll hold it 20%. I mean, we get a lot of good support from people who are loyal, who appreciate stuff we've done, that we don't need to drop it. And that fee you see, that's on the screen right now, that's the fee on the data provider side. So coincidentally, the colluders, what they would do, you can change your fee at will on the data side without having to get it approved from your community, from your delegators. On the validator side, you only change it when you set up your validator. So if your self bond expires, you have to come in, set a new one. All your stakers are washed out, and then you set a new one, and then they can choose whether or not to stake with you. at your new fee. So you can't like pull the fast one on them. You can't set it at 1%,
Set everything.
let it run out, and then rug them to 20. On the data provider side, you can. So what the colluders were doing is you'd see 4 all of a sudden spin up at 1 to 2%. So that would artificially raise the reward rate even higher than it needed to be. And then all of a sudden, when they drew in enough vote power, all of a sudden they'd raise it back up to 20. So they draw in votes by showing a artificially high reward rate, and then they'd raise it to 20, and then that's when they make their money. And no one noticed because at that point they have the vote power where the collective group of colluders had enough vote power to stand on their own, and then they raise their fee again and still show a relatively high reward rate, not as high as it had been, but it would still show high, and they would just no one would move because it's a it's kind of like it's a task that delegators wouldn't feel the need to do because it was still a pretty high reward rate, still in the top 10. Whereas when they had the 1% fee, it would be like blowing everybody away. So that was a way to game that. Now it seems like there's been a new tactic to game the staking because it's been noticed that it influences the rewards on the data provider side with fast updates.
Man,
So
you guys got your own drama to fix. It's crazy. All right.
Yeah. All right. So
the people that are not signing, then that means that the people that are delegated to them, they're not making any money. They're not making any fees or any rewards.
no, once rewards are signed by 50%, the rewards then go out to everybody.
Oh,
But the reason they're taking so long is because there's so many people not signing. Part of your role as a data provider is to sign aggressively. Once rewards are published, your job as a data provider is to go approve those published rewards, which once 50% of the total weight does that, then they're released. There's been like a 2-day delay at times because so many aren't going to do that. And if you're relying on those rewards Monday morning and they don't come till Tuesday night, time is money. Like if you might miss a snapshot because of that. You might miss, if those rewards aren't available.
So that has direct effect on you guys more than it does the other, which then affects the guys who are contributing to you.
Yeah, it affects. Yeah. So if we go sign,
domino effect.
Yeah, if we sign right away and it sits at 42% for 2 days and doesn't come through, we might miss a snapshot on that balance. There might be an opportunity in DeFi that we miss because somebody didn't sign to release those rewards. So it is important. At some point, we should see everybody be roughly 5 out of 10. Because if everyone's racing to sign the minute rewards are published, then you're gonna miss sometimes. Right now, you see like anywhere from 7 to 10, and then a bunch down at like 0, 1, 2.
I think there should be some kind of negative connotation. Anybody below 3, I would say, in my opinion, but maybe 2. There's a negative weight that is triggered for anybody who has, if you're 2 for 10, all of a sudden your rewards are cut in half.
Yeah, and I mean the eventually like stuff happens. I don't blame anyone for missing.
That's why I said 2 out of 10. 2 out of 10. That's not even trying. If you're at 2 out of 10, you're not even trying.
Yeah, you're not trying. That's the key. 2 out of 10, and there's a ton at 0, which.
So yeah, I think that would be a tricky one because like you don't want the people that are delegating to them to suffer because they're not doing their job correctly, but maybe the fee is the one that could be canceled if they're not participating enough. Like that could be thinking an idea that then the validators, if they're not participating enough, then they get their fee cut in half or something like that. And then
I've talked about and I threw ridiculous numbers out in a discussion with other data providers. I talked about if you're 0 for 30, you should get your reward slashed. Like I made it a ridiculous number. If you don't sign a single time in 100 days, you should get slashed. That's like crazy high. It could even go to 0 of 20, 0 of 10. But once it becomes more competitive, then the little guys are at a huge disadvantage. Right now, there's so many that aren't even trying. where it's like there should be some sort of consequences because you're not even trying. Once it becomes everyone signing rapidly, then I would want that to be at like 0 for 30, 0 for 40, because those little guys don't have much influence. And you could viably try to sign in a timely way and just miss it because the big guys are getting to it fast. So that number would need to be really high just to protect the smaller providers who could get hosed just because of the way the weight works.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Can you go up, scroll up, Steven, please?
Yep.
Can you explain to me again? I'm kind of confused. What is the uptime signed and reward signed?
So uptime signed is an automatic process that signs everybody's. I believe it signs everybody's uptime, like how often they're submitting. That happens automatically right at epoch end, and that's in everybody's system. The reward signed is after uptime is signed. The rewards are published by the Flare Foundation. I believe it's the foundation that publishes. Well, the chain publishes the rewards. When the rewards are published, we get notified. We have a system set up that sends us an email. That's us personally. I don't know what other people do. We have a system, a monitor set up that sends us an email when they're published, and then we have to go sign a transaction to agree with the rewards that are published and then release them to delegators. So that's the important one. The uptime just kind of happens automatically. That's why you'll see like some people who didn't update haven't added that to their system, but most people have added it, which is why you'll see like it's kind of random. It'll be 3, 5, 6, 7. Everyone's kind of right in the middle. Some people haven't updated, so they probably need to, but that's not been a huge concern. The one that's the concern that actually delays the rewards would be the reward signed, because that has to happen manually by the data provider by 50% of the weight in order for rewards to get released.
So which validator here is the company building the Genesis Pass?
That would be Focus. So here's what we'll do. Go to you're in FSP, which is Flare Systems. Go to FTSO. Yep. So now this will show how accurate everyone is on those individual channels. So the primary is like the thin channel, and these are all on anchor feeds. So the primary will be that thin
How do you think we know what anchor feeds are?
Anchor feeds are the prices that come in every 90 seconds.
Gotcha. Okay.
Every 90 seconds, everyone submits a price for all the different assets. The primary channel is the accuracy of the finalized price. So ACDT is hitting that finalized price within that channel. It's the middle 50%. So there's an array of prices submitted. Say there's 100 prices submitted. That middle channel is made up of the median is the finalized price. The channel surrounding it is the middle 50% of 25% above the finalized price and 25% below it. So if there's 100 prices submitted and it's anywhere from a 90, so we'll use a stable coin as an example because the numbers are easy. The numbers are between 99 and 101. $1 is the finalized price. That's the price that is that number 50, right in the middle of all of the whole price array. So then every price above that, of 25 above that, would get rewarded, and 25 below that would get rewarded. That's the median channel. That's the primary channel that surrounds the median price. So the secondary is a band that was put in to reward accurate enough data. So the secondary channel is a bit bigger. I forget the exact way the secondary channel is formed. So the secondary channel is a bit bigger, and it takes up, I think, the price, the rewards that go to the FTSO, I think it's 40% go to the primary channel, 60% go to the secondary channel. So if you filter by primary, you'll see the guys, there'll be like kind of a noticeable cutoff of where guys are running machine learning and where they aren't. So if you scroll down, you'll see us like, where to go?
Oh no, I clicked it one more time to go up from the bottom.
So you'll see a lot of people in the 8 to 16 range. We should
What do
be
you
in
mean 8 to 16%?
what?
Oh, okay, yeah.
So
12.
you'll see a bunch, and those are people like us that are just submitting untouched raw data from off chain. Now, the ones that are using machine learning, you'll see a jump, a noticeable jump.
Yeah, I got the 40s, 50s.
So that range from like below 20 to above 20, all these are most likely using some sort of more sophisticated predictive algorithm. Some are better
Gotcha.
than others. We've taken the stance that we don't think that's like the ideal use case for something like that. So EDP has the highest. And that used to be automatic by far. They would blow us away in rewards. So like these guys at the top, the amount they've earned over the last year or two prior to FTSO V2 kicking in, those guys were earning like all the rewards. It wasn't even close. We didn't even claim rewards for like months at a time because it wasn't even worth going in to claim them. We would get like
Y'all were bootstrapping it hardcore with no money.
yeah. So yeah, but that's why, our validator is what kept us afloat. So yeah, so that then there's a secondary channel that I believe it's now 60% goes to, and then availability is an important one. That's your uptime. That's like, if there's 50 prices being submitted every epoch, every 90 seconds, that's, if you're at 100%, obviously you're doing 50 of 50 over the last, I think this covers 12 hours or 6 hours. So that would be the uptime of your data submissions over the span of that 6 hours. Sensei nodes is down.
I was gonna say they've been down.
Yeah. So you'll see periodically we'll miss. We should be at 100. We also built a monitor that alerts us if we miss 3 in a row. Then it shoots out an email to us.
80%.
Yeah, most are going to be at 100. Yeah, there we are.
Right there, nice 100%, 88, 14.
Low on that one. So yeah, so that's basically how those reward channels work. And that's like rewarding the accuracy of the data you submit. And yeah, people have taken different stances on it.
Complex. What? I didn't know it was this complex.
Oh yeah. And that's go back up. Now let's check out the minimal conditions. So minimal conditions is also a trailing metric. It will show, in order to be reward eligible, you have to either have a pass that covers you for missing one of these systems. So those guys aren't reward eligible because they ran out of passes and they're not up on anchor feeds and staking. So their validator's down and they're not submitting data. And they were out of passes. So you get a pass every time you meet minimal conditions. The max passes you can hold is 3. If you have 3 passes, which hopefully we'll see someone like this, if you have 3 passes and you're down on anchor feeds, you'll lose a pass. There's one, Tempest. So last cycle, last epoch, which is 3.5 days, Tempest must have missed something, which they lost a pass for, which kept them reward eligible, but they were down on one of the systems. There's some that are out of passes. So like Flare Network, that's a test that they have. They're never reward eligible by design because they're testing something. So they have 0 passes and they're not and their validators down. So they weren't reward eligible. Same with Stake Capital. So if you're delegated to someone where on that right-hand side it shows a no, that means you did not get rewards last epoch.
Wow. Didn't know that.
Yep. So and then if you check here and somebody has 0 passes, there's a good chance the risk of delegating to them is higher because there's a chance if something goes down, they don't even have a pass to cover for it and keep them reward eligible. So if Stake Core were to go down, if their validator were to go down for one epoch, they don't have any passes. That's the one with 0 right there. They don't have any passes to cover that mistake.
But then
shouldn't they on the next epoch get one?
Say it again.
Shouldn't on the next epoch they get one?
They should show passes again. Yeah.
Yeah, that was going to be my question. So as long as they can stay upline for the whole 3.5 days, then they get a pass. Is that correct?
You don't even have to stay online for the whole 3.5. We looked at uptime on the last page. Your uptime I think you just have to be submitting during that epoch. You have to oh gosh, what's it called? You have to be a participant. There's something that I forget what the name of it is. But you have to be a participant in that epoch.
Okay. So I was going to ask you why you're using this instead of Flare Metrics, but yeah, this has so much more information than the other page, right?
Yeah. I use Flare Metrics Flare Metrics actually gives real-time vote power.
All right, there's Focus. There's Focus that you were talking about it. I don't know.
Right there.
You came up.
Wow. They're not even online right now.
Yeah, so they've been down for a while. So
what happens if you click on them? Let's click on
go to them. So if you click on the individual providers, it'll bring you to their price submissions. So there's their addresses.
The RE registration, what is it?
Say it again. Which one?
On the top right, it says RE registration.
That's the word I was looking for. That's their registration for participating in the FTSO. Every epoch, you have to register. So I think it's in like some hours before the start of the next epoch, the registration will kick off, and you have to register in order to submit data. So they've missed registration 2 times in a row, which means their system's just not running.
So that means that you have to like check in. It's kind of like when you go into an airplane that you have to check in 24 hours. And
basically, yeah. It's a good way to look at it. It's like, hey, we're going to be actually, if you scroll down, it'll show the events.
And I got about 9 to 10 minutes, guys, and I'll have to jump off here. So
yep, as will I. So this shows, what is this? Delegation address. Registration confirmed.
Right,
oh,
yeah.
Oops, yeah, they've been down a while.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's last year.
Yeah. Yeah, they missed a lot of stuff over the span of the last few months while they've been doing their other project, True Gems. I don't know if that's taking their time away or what's going on with them.
Well, in the last, not this week, but last week, Community Flare. He always does like a rundown of the activity on different like NFTs. And I remember last week or the week before, he was like, well, I don't know if I'm going to even keep mentioning True Gems because I think the volume just went close to 0.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. That's another one that I'm keeping a close eye on, as are other people. All right, so go to FTC. So this is the Flare data connector. This is part of the reason why infrastructure providing is going to get real expensive. If you're an infrastructure provider everything that the Flare data connector connects to, we have to run infrastructure on. So we run a Bitcoin node, we run an XRPL node, we run a Doge node. Any request that comes to attest information across chain, we have to run a node on that chain. XRPL nodes are very expensive.
So
It's not crazy, but it's definitely if you look on the XRPL, like there was actually a post by someone recently talking about how there was a big increase in nodes run on the XRPL. That increase was because of Flare. It's because
y'all have to get 100 data. 100 people have to get them.
Yeah. So like 60 people spun up XRP nodes at the same time. That was all the Flare infrastructure providers.
Is there 60 or 100?
Right now, I think it's depending on who registers. I think it's in the range of 80. So there's room. Like anybody out there who wants to go at it and
Hard pass for me.
has some funds.
Okay,
I'm already struggling with this.
Scroll to the right real quick. I'll show you how to. Is there a way? Oh, I'm sorry. Click on voting round. Go back to that. So click on voting round. Just do the top one. So this will show you who's participating in the FTC. Eventually, the FTC will be part of the minimal conditions. So you're looking for green. So if you scroll down, you'll see those are all. There's gonna be some red, but these are. I don't even know what this was attesting to, but this was some sort of transaction that was attested to, and all these ones in green got it. All these people responded and basically attested that whatever was being asked happened.
Okay, so I have one last question for you before we close up. What's in it for validators to go through all this trouble? Because it does seem like a lot of trouble, and I don't know, like what's in it for people to do all of this?
Well, you get rewarded, and I mean it's basically if you believe in what the network's building and the things coming to Songbird and Flare, it's a
must.
Yeah, it will all these providers. The network dies without them. But basically, it's us saying, "Hey, we believe in what's going on here. We believe in what's being built. We think Flare has a future, and will be a big player in the crypto sphere, and we want to run these systems so that the people who are building dApps and stuff on Flare have the ability to use the data that we're providing. They have the ability to attest to transactions that are happening on other chains, which I would assume in the coming months we'll hear from Hugo on some of the stuff he touched on today of things being built that use these systems. There's already stuff using these systems. If you pay attention to stuff being built in dApps right now, there's stuff that's using the FTC. There's stuff that's using the data feeds. I mean, all the dexes are using the data feeds. The perp dex on Spark is using the data feeds to get prices for assets. Santiago's project, is it XDFI? That's all those transactions that close out at the end of the day. That's all the prices that you're getting is all coming from the FTSO. So that's what's driving the network. Those are the systems that stuff is hopefully being built on. And
right. In the future, as that grows, I mean, the rewards are just going to grow for the node providers as well.
Yeah, and the people that delegate and stake to them. I mean, I
use S-Flare so much. That's why I never even look at this. Like, I mean, I'm like locked into S-Flare. Like, that's my thing.
Yeah, you're getting rewards in a different way. So, yeah, I mean, they're staking to us. Actually, you can actually see all of who they stake to. Have you ever gone?
Yeah, that would be nice to see. How do you do that?
So real quick, go to advanced. I'll show you one more thing here.
Yeah.
And go to reward epoch. So the collecting offers these are all different things that if you're technically inclined, it tells you basically like collecting offers is asking what is going to be included in the FTSO for next cycle. So this is just like kind of technical details of click on 274 to the left. So the collecting offers tab will tell you, scroll down, it'll tell you what's all being requested for next epoch. So anytime a new feed gets added, it'll show up in this collecting offers tab. And that's probably just about the final thing to show you. Show me the advanced tab one more time. Transactions. Nothing else too important. That's kind of the gist of the rundown. I think that'll give a good starting point.
Yeah, my head's exploding. It's gonna be. I'm gonna have to rewatch this and go through it again.
Yeah, there's a ton of. I think this site hasn't been promoted a ton, and I think there's so much information here. I check this multiple times a day. There's so much information here that people don't look at to see the different data providers. I mean, when you go to delegate, you pull up your app, whatever you delegate on, you see the list of providers, and you just kind of click one without knowing details about them.
I didn't have a clue.
Details. Go to your SFlare page.